Listen carefully. Your emotions are not the problem. Your lack of control over them is. Every argument you regret, every decision you wish you could undo, every moment you gave away your power, it happened because you reacted instead of responded. In the next 7 days, you will learn how to interrupt emotional chaos, shut down overreactions instantly, and stay calm when everyone else loses control. This is not motivation. This is not theory. This is emotional discipline. And once you master it, nothing and no one will ever control you again.
Chapter 1. Stop letting emotions lead your life. Let's start with a hard truth. Your life is not shaped by your intentions. It is shaped by your reactions. What you say when you're angry, what you do when you're afraid, what you tolerate when you feel insecure. That is what decides your future. Most people believe their emotions are uncontrollable. They say things like, "That's just how I am," or "I can't help how I feel." That belief alone keeps them trapped, because the moment you believe emotions are in charge, you hand over authority. You stop being the leader of your life and become a follower of your moods. And moods are terrible leaders. Here's the first principle you must understand if you want emotional control. Emotions are signals, not commands. They inform you, they alert you, they do not get to decide your behavior. But most people don't live this way. They feel anger and they obey it. They feel sadness and they sink into it. They feel anxiety and they retreat. Over time, this becomes automatic. Reaction becomes identity. Feel it, but don't follow it. Feel it, but don't follow it. Say that again in your mind. Because every emotional overreaction in your life came from one mistake. You followed the feeling without questioning it. Think about the last argument you regret. You didn't plan to say those words. They escaped you because emotion was driving. Think about the opportunity you avoided. Fear told you to stay safe, and you listened. Think about the relationship you damaged. Pride spoke. Ego reacted. Control disappeared. This is not weakness. This is conditioning. You were trained by repetition to react this way. From childhood, you were rewarded for emotional expression, not emotional regulation. Cry and someone comes to save you. Get angry and someone backs down. Over time, the nervous system learns emotion equals action. But adulthood demands a different skill, emotional discipline. And emotional discipline starts with one decision. Emotions no longer lead. I do. That decision alone won't change everything overnight, but it changes the direction, and direction is everything. Here's what most people don't realize. The emotion you feel is often outdated. It's a leftover survival response. Your body reacts faster than your logic. It doesn't ask, is this useful? It asks, is this familiar? That's why you overreact to small things. That's why criticism feels like a threat. That's why silence feels like rejection. Your nervous system is protecting an old story. Your job is not to erase emotion. Your job is to override it. And you do that by creating distance between feeling and action. Right now, for most people, the gap is zero. Emotion appears, reaction follows instantly. No space, no pause, no control. This chapter is about creating that gap, because in that gap, your power returns. Let's make this practical. The moment you feel a strong emotion, anger, fear, embarrassment, jealousy, you must label it. Not justify it, not explain it. Label it. Say, this is anger. This is fear. This is insecurity.
Why does this matter? Because labeling slows the emotional response. It pulls the brain out of automatic mode. You stop being inside the emotion and start observing it. Observation weakens emotion. Awareness creates control. Feel it, but don't follow it. Most people skip this step. They go straight from feeling to acting. And once action happens, consequences follow. Words cannot be taken back. Decisions create momentum. Reputations are shaped. One emotional reaction can cost you years. That's why emotional control isn't optional. It's survival at a higher level. Now understand this clearly. Suppressing emotions is not control. Exploding emotionally is not honesty. Both are forms of slavery. True control is restraint with awareness. You allow the emotion to exist, but you deny it authority. Imagine a child screaming for candy. You don't negotiate, you don't panic, you don't scream back. You remain calm. You decide. That's how you must treat your emotions. Firm, calm, non-reactive. Here's another truth most people avoid. Emotional reactions feel good in the moment. Anger feels powerful. Victimhood feels justified. Drama feels alive. But they cost you later. Immediate relief, long-term damage. Emotional discipline flips this equation. Short-term discomfort, long-term power. When you don't react, it feels uncomfortable. Your body wants release. Your ego wants expression. But if you stay still, something incredible happens. The emotion peaks, then it falls. Every emotion is temporary if you don't feed it. Reacting feeds it. Ruminating feeds it. Talking about it feeds it. Silence starves it. This is why calm people seem powerful. They don't rush to discharge emotion. They let it pass through without hijacking behavior. They feel it, but they don't follow it. Say it again. Now let's address the excuse people love to hide behind, but this is just who I am. No, this is who you've practiced being. You practiced reacting. You practiced overthinking. You practiced emotional expression without control. Practice created this. Practice can dismantle it. Every time you pause instead of react, you weaken the old pattern. Every time you choose restraint, you build a new one. Emotional control is built the same way emotional chaos was built, through repetition. That means you must stop looking for instant mastery. You're not here to eliminate emotion. You're here to lead it. And leadership requires consistency. This chapter's rule is simple, but not easy. No emotional reaction gets a free pass. Not anger, not sadness, not excitement, not fear. You acknowledge it, you pause, you decide. Even a 2-second pause changes everything. Because once you stop letting emotions lead your life, something shifts. You feel grounded, you feel steady, you feel less pulled by external events. People notice. They sense that you are not easily shaken, that you don't rise and fall with every comment, every delay, every problem. That is the foundation of emotional mastery. And it starts here. This chapter is not about being calm all the time. That's unrealistic. This chapter is about refusing to be controlled all the time. From this point forward, remember this sentence. Emotions speak. You decide. Say it. Emotions speak. You decide. In the next chapter, you'll learn why emotional control has nothing to do with personality and everything to do with training. Because once you stop letting emotions lead your life, the next question becomes obvious. If control is a skill, why haven't you trained it yet?
Chapter 2. Emotional control is a skill, not a personality trait. Most people give up on emotional control before they ever start. They say, "I'm just an emotional person," or "Some people are naturally calm, I'm not," or "This is just my personality." That belief is comfortable, and it is completely false. Emotional control is not a personality trait. It is a trained skill. Calm people were not born calm. Disciplined people were not born disciplined. They practiced something you haven't practiced yet. And here's the dangerous part. When you believe emotional control is genetic, you stop taking responsibility. You excuse every outburst, every overreaction, every emotional mistake. You say, "That's just how I am." No, that's how you've been rehearsing. Let's be clear, your brain is not fixed. Your nervous system is not frozen in time. It adapts to what you repeatedly do. It strengthens what you repeatedly use. If you repeatedly react emotionally, your brain gets better at reacting emotionally. If you repeatedly pause, regulate, and choose, your brain gets better at control. What you practice emotionally, you become. What you practice emotionally, you become. Say it again. This is why two people can face the same stress and respond completely differently. One explodes, one stays grounded. One panics, one adapts. Not because of personality, because of training. Think about any skill: driving, speaking, lifting weights. At first, you were terrible, uncoordinated, overwhelmed. Then repetition kicked in. Movements became automatic. Emotional control works the same way. Right now, your emotional reactions feel automatic because you've practiced them for years. The speed doesn't mean it's natural, it means it's rehearsed. And anything rehearsed can be retrained. Here's the shift you must make in your identity starting today. You are not an emotional person. You are a person with untrained emotional responses. That sentence alone removes shame and restores power. Because shame keeps you stuck. Training moves you forward. Most people don't train emotional control intentionally. They wait for life to force lessons on them. Breakups, failures, losses, humiliation. But you don't need trauma to grow discipline. You need structure. This audiobook is structure. Now let's break down how emotional training actually works. Every emotional response follows the same loop: trigger, sensation, interpretation, reaction. You don't control the trigger. You don't fully control the sensation, but you do control interpretation and reaction with training. Untrained people collapse this loop. Trigger equals reaction. No space, no choice. Trained people slow it down. They recognize the sensation. They question the interpretation. They choose the response. That slowing down is not personality. It is practice. Here's where most people fail. They only try to control emotions when things are intense. Big arguments, major stress, high stakes. That's like only going to the gym once a year and expecting strength. You train emotional control in small moments. Traffic, delays, minor criticism, waiting, disappointment. These are not annoyances, they are training reps. Every time you remain calm in a small moment, you're building capacity for big moments. But most people waste these reps. They sigh, they complain, they tense up, they mentally spiral. And then they wonder why they lose control when it really matters. You don't rise to the occasion, you fall to the level of your training. Let that sink in.
If you want emotional mastery, you must stop viewing calmness as something you try to have. It's something you build. Here's a practical rule for this chapter. Never trust how you feel. Train how you respond. Feelings fluctuate. Skills compound. Some days you'll feel calm. Some days you won't. That's irrelevant. Your behavior must remain consistent. Consistency beats intensity. A person who controls their reactions 70% of the time will always outperform the person who controls them 100% of the time once in a while. Training is boring. Repetition is boring. Discipline is boring. And that's why it works. Emotionally reactive people chase expression. Emotionally disciplined people chase regulation. Now let's talk about something uncomfortable. Emotional identity. Many people secretly like their emotional chaos. It gives them identity. I'm passionate. I'm intense. I feel deeply. But ask yourself honestly, has that identity helped you or has it cost you? Emotional control does not make you cold. It makes you precise. It doesn't remove feeling. It removes damage. And yes, training control will feel unnatural at first. You'll feel like you're holding back, like you're being fake, like you're betraying yourself. That feeling is called withdrawal. You're withdrawing from an old habit. When someone stops overeating, hunger screams. When someone stops reacting emotionally, emotion screams. That doesn't mean the change is wrong. It means it's working. What you practice emotionally, you become. This week, you are not trying to be calm forever. You are training the muscle, one repetition at a time. So here is your behavioral assignment for this chapter. For the next 24 hours, treat every emotional reaction as practice, not proof of who you are. When irritation arises, say, training rep. When anxiety appears, say, training rep. When anger flares, say, training rep. This reframes discomfort as progress. You are no longer failing, you are training. And remember, skills feel forced before they feel natural. That's how learning works. Eventually, emotional control stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like default. But only if you earn it through repetition. This chapter exists to remove the excuse. You are not broken. You are not doomed by personality. You are simply untrained. And untrained things can be trained. In the next chapter, we're going to install the most important tool in emotional mastery, the pause. Because once you accept that control is a skill, the next step becomes critical. If you don't pause first, you will always pay later. That's where we go next.
Chapter 3. Pause first or pay later. Every emotional mistake you've ever made shares one thing in common. You moved too fast. You spoke too quickly. You decided too early. You reacted without space. Speed is the enemy of control. Emotion wants immediacy. It demands action now. It whispers, say it, do it, defend yourself, fix this instantly. And the faster you move, the less control you have. That's why this chapter is non-negotiable. If you master nothing else in this audiobook, master this, the pause. Because if you don't pause first, you will pay later. You'll pay with regret. You'll pay with damaged relationships. You'll pay with lost respect. You'll pay with decisions you can't undo. The pause is not weakness. The pause is power. Most people misunderstand what a pause actually is. They think it's hesitation, fear, uncertainty. It's not. A pause is a deliberate interruption of impulse. It's the moment you choose not to let emotion rush you into action. And that moment, small as it seems,
is where control lives. Right now, your emotional system operates like a fire alarm, loud, sudden, urgent. It doesn't care if the fire is real, it just wants reaction. The pause is you walking to the alarm panel and deciding whether to pull it or silence it. Without the pause, you are always late, always reacting to damage already done. With the pause, you become early. You catch yourself before impact. Let's talk about what actually happens in your body when emotion hits. Your heart rate increases, your muscles tense, your breathing shortens. This is your nervous system preparing for action, fight or flight, ancient wiring. Logic shuts down, perspective narrows. You lose access to long-term thinking. This is why people say, "I don't know what came over me." Nothing came over you. You lost the pause. The pause allows your nervous system to downshift. It gives your brain time to re-engage. Even 2 or 3 seconds can change the entire outcome. 2 seconds can save a relationship. 3 seconds can save your reputation. 5 seconds can save your future. Delay the reaction, dominate the outcome. Say it again. Most people think emotional strength means controlling what you feel. That's incorrect. Emotional strength means controlling when you act. You don't need to kill the emotion, you need to outweight it. Here's the rule. No emotional response deserves an immediate reaction. Not anger, not excitement, not fear, not joy. Emotion lies about urgency. Everything feels like it needs an instant response. It doesn't. Emails don't need instant replies. Messages don't need instant answers. Criticism doesn't need instant defense. Speed feels productive. It is not. Speed is how you make emotional mistakes efficiently. The pause introduces friction, and friction saves you. Now let's make this concrete. The pause has 3 parts: simple, repeatable, effective. First, stop your body. Do not move, do not speak, do not type. Stillness breaks momentum. Second, slow your breathing. Inhale through your nose for 4 seconds. Exhale slowly for 6. Longer exhales signal safety to your nervous system. Third, name the cost. Ask yourself, if I react right now, what will it cost me later? That question activates consequence awareness. Emotion hates consequences. Control depends on them. This entire process takes less than 10 seconds, and yet most people refuse to do it. Why? Because emotion feels entitled, because ego feels urgent, because pausing feels like losing. But here's the truth. The person who pauses controls the frame. When you don't react immediately, you unsettle people. You don't give them emotional feedback to work with. You don't escalate. You don't collapse. You stay neutral. Neutral is powerful. Think about the calmest person you know, the one who never rushes, never explodes, never begs for understanding. They pause. And because they pause, people respect them, even if they don't realize why. Now let's address a common fear. If I pause, won't I miss my chance? No. You don't miss chances by pausing. You miss chances by reacting poorly. The right response is still available after the pause. The wrong response is permanent. Words spoken in anger cannot be unsaid. Actions taken in fear cannot be erased. Pausing preserves optionality, and optionality is leverage. Another mistake people make is believing that pausing means suppressing. It doesn't. Suppression is pushing emotion down. Pausing is letting it pass. There's a difference. Suppression builds pressure. Pausing releases it. Emotion rises like a wave. If you ride it, it crashes you. If you stand still, it passes. Most emotions peak for seconds, not hours, but when you react, you restart the cycle, you feed the wave. Pause starves it. This is why people who pause seem emotionally mature. They are not fighting emotion, they are letting it burn out. Delay the reaction, dominate the outcome. This chapter requires discipline, not once, every time. You don't get to pause only when it's convenient. You pause especially when it's uncomfortable. That's the training. Here's your assignment for this chapter. For the next 48 hours, no emotional response is immediate. If you feel the urge to explain yourself, pause. If you feel the urge to defend, pause. If you feel the urge to fire back, pause. Even if you decide to respond later, you respond after the pause. You will notice something unsettling at first. Silence feels loud. Stillness feels awkward. Your mind will race. That's withdrawal. Stay with it. Because every time you pause instead of react, you reclaim authority over your life. And authority is the theme of this book. You are not here to be emotionally numb. You are here to be emotionally sovereign. And sovereignty begins with the pause. In the next chapter, we're going to dismantle one of the biggest causes of emotional overreaction, taking things personally. Because even with the pause, if you keep making everything about you, emotion will find a way in. That's where we go next.
Chapter 4. Stop taking things personally. Most emotional suffering is self-inflicted. Not because the world is kind, not because people are gentle, but because you take things personally that were never about you. This chapter will remove more emotional pain from your life than almost anything else in this audiobook, if you apply it. Here is the truth most people resist. People are reacting to their own internal world, not to you. Their stress, their fear, their insecurity, their unmet expectations. But when someone speaks sharply, ignores you, criticizes you, or disappoints you, your mind does something dangerous. It says, "This means something about me." And the moment you accept that thought, emotion floods in. Anger, shame, defensiveness, sadness. Not because of what happened, but because of the meaning you assign to it. Events don't create emotional chaos. Interpretations do. Say that again. You don't react to reality. You react to the story you tell yourself about reality. And most of those stories are false. Someone doesn't reply to your message. You assume rejection. Someone criticizes your work. You assume disrespect. Someone is distant. You assume you've done something wrong. These assumptions feel real. They feel logical, but they are guesses, and you're punishing yourself for guesses. That is emotional self-sabotage. Here's the rule you must install in your mind. Unless someone clearly tells you their intention, assume nothing. Silence is not a message. Tone is not truth. Facial expressions are not facts. When you take things personally, you center yourself in every situation. You become the main character in other people's stories. That's a heavy burden, and it's not accurate. Most people are too busy managing their own lives to be focused on yours. And when they are focused on you, it's usually a reflection of something unresolved in them. Disrespect often comes from insecurity. Criticism often comes from frustration. Coldness often comes from emotional overload. This doesn't excuse bad behavior, it explains it. And explanation brings emotional distance. Distance brings control.
The emotionally disciplined person doesn't ask, "Why did they do this to me?" They ask, "What might be happening in them?" That question alone dissolves reactivity. Now let's talk about ego. Your ego wants to be involved. It wants credit and blame. It wants praise and protection. It wants everything to mean something about you. Ego is loud. Control is quiet. The moment you feel emotionally triggered, ask yourself this: am I reacting to reality or to my ego? That question exposes the truth. Ego demands defense. Control demands clarity. Here's a powerful practice for this chapter: mental detachment. Detachment doesn't mean apathy. It means refusing to personalize what you don't fully understand. When something triggers you, imagine stepping back mentally and watching the situation as an observer. Not judging, not defending, just watching. This shift moves you from emotion to analysis, and analysis is calm. Emotion says, "This is about me." Analysis says, "This is information." Information doesn't hurt, stories do. Let's take a real-world example. Someone raises their voice at you. The untrained response: anger, defense, matching energy. The trained response: pause, observe, detach. You recognize that raised voices come from loss of control, not power. You refuse to mirror it. You lower your voice instead. Now you control the emotional temperature. That is dominance, not aggression. Another example: criticism. Most people collapse or fight. They take criticism as an attack on identity. But disciplined people separate feedback from self-worth. Feedback is data. Self-worth is internal. When you stop tying your identity to external opinions, emotional control becomes effortless. You listen. You extract what's useful. You discard the rest. No emotional spike required. Here's a phrase to repeat when you feel personally attacked: this is not about me. Don't make it about me. Say it again. Because making everything about you creates emotional chaos. Detachment creates emotional stability. Now, understand this. People who take things personally are easy to manipulate. A comment controls them. A tone shifts them. A look destabilizes them. When you stop taking things personally, you become difficult to control. That's why emotionally disciplined people appear confident. It's not arrogance, it's insulation. They don't absorb everything. They decide what enters. This chapter requires humility. It requires admitting that your interpretation may be wrong, that your emotional reaction may be unnecessary. But humility creates freedom. Your assignment for this chapter is simple but challenging. For the next 72 hours, whenever you feel emotionally triggered by someone else, immediately ask, what are 3 alternative explanations for this behavior that have nothing to do with me? Force your mind to generate options. This breaks emotional certainty. Certainty fuels reaction. Uncertainty creates pause, and pause is power. Remember this: you cannot control other people's behavior, but you can control how personally you take it. Stop making everything about you, and emotional control becomes natural. This chapter reinforces the central theme of this book. Control does not come from changing the world, it comes from changing your internal responses. In the next chapter, we move from the mind to the body. Because even when your thinking is right, your body can hijack you. To master emotional control fully, you must learn this truth. If you control the body, you control the emotion. That's where we go next.
Chapter 5. Control the body to control the mind. Most people try to control emotions using thought alone. They think their way out, they analyze, they reason, and they fail. Because emotion does not start in the mind. Emotion starts in the body. Your body reacts first. Your thoughts come second. That's why logic disappears when emotion spikes. The body has already taken control. So, if you want emotional mastery, you must stop fighting emotion at the level of thought and start controlling it at the level of physiology. Change the body, command the emotion. Say it again. When stress hits, your shoulders rise, your jaw tightens, your breathing becomes shallow. That physical shift is the emotion. If you leave the body in that state, the mind has no chance. Calm thoughts cannot exist in a tense body. This chapter gives you physical control tools, simple, immediate, effective. First, posture. Slouched posture signals defeat and stress to the nervous system. Upright posture signals safety and confidence. This is not motivational nonsense. It is biology. Stand or sit up straight, shoulders back, chest open. You will feel resistance. That's because your body is used to collapsing under pressure. Do it anyway. The body follows structure. Emotion follows the body. Second, breathing. Breath is the remote control of the nervous system. Fast, shallow breathing tells your brain you're in danger. Slow, deep breathing tells your brain you're safe. When emotion spikes, do not breathe faster, breathe slower. Here's the rule. Longer exhales calm the system. Inhale for 4 seconds, exhale for 6 to 8 seconds. Do this 5 times. You are not calming down, you are regulating. Third, muscle relaxation. Tension holds emotion in place. Scan your body, jaw, hands, shoulders, stomach. Release tension deliberately. Emotion cannot stay intense in a relaxed body. This is why athletes and professionals train physical regulation under stress, not because they're emotional, but because they understand biology. Here's what most people don't realize. If your body stays calm, your mind will follow, even if your thoughts are chaotic at first. Body first, mind second. This is why people who look calm often feel calm, and people who look anxious usually are anxious. Your body is not expressing your emotion, it is creating it. Now let's talk about grounding. When emotion overwhelms you, your attention goes inward, thoughts spiral, sensations intensify. Grounding pulls attention outward. Name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear. This anchors you in the present moment, and the present moment is rarely as dangerous as your mind claims. Emotion thrives in imagined futures and remembered pasts. Control lives in the present. Here's a powerful truth. You cannot be grounded and overwhelmed at the same time. Now let's talk about movement. Stored emotion needs an outlet, but not an explosive one. Walking, stretching, controlled exercise. Movement processes emotion without damage. Sitting still while emotionally charged often makes things worse. You ruminate, you spiral. Move the body, free the mind. This chapter is about installing a new reflex. When emotion hits, instead of asking, "Why do I feel this way?" ask, "What is my body doing right now?" Correct the body first. This bypasses overthinking. Overthinking feels productive. It's not. It keeps emotion alive. Regulation is action, not analysis.
Here's your assignment for this chapter. For the next week, when you feel emotionally charged, you are not allowed to analyze the situation for the first 60 seconds. You must regulate the body first. Posture, breathing, relaxation, grounding. Only after your body is stable do you allow thinking. This trains a new sequence: body, mind, action, not emotion, reaction, regret. Remember this phrase: change the body, command the emotion. Say it, because emotional mastery is not about suppressing feeling, it's about managing the system that creates feeling. This chapter connects directly to the core theme of the book. Emotional control is proactive, not reactive. You don't wait for emotion to overwhelm you and then fight it. You intercept it early, physically. In the next chapter, we're going to destroy a common myth that holds people back: the belief that understanding emotions is enough. It's not, because emotional intelligence without discipline is useless. That's where we go next.
Chapter 6. Emotional discipline beats emotional intelligence. Understanding your emotions does not make you powerful. Controlling your behavior does. This chapter is where many people get exposed. They read books, they analyze their childhood, they can explain exactly why they feel the way they feel, and yet they still overreact. They still explode. They still sabotage themselves. Why? Because emotional intelligence without discipline is decoration. It looks impressive. It does nothing under pressure. You can understand every emotion you have and still be ruled by them. Insight is not control. Awareness is not restraint. Discipline is restraint. This chapter dismantles a dangerous lie. If I understand my emotions, I'll be able to control them. No. Understanding does not equal obedience. You can understand that sugar is unhealthy and still eat it. You can understand that anger is harmful and still explode. Knowledge does not create change. Behavior does. Emotionally disciplined people are not necessarily more self-aware. They are more self-governed. They don't ask, "Why do I feel this way?" in the heat of the moment. They ask, "What is required of me right now?" That question changes everything. Most people use emotional intelligence to justify bad behavior. I reacted because I was triggered. I yelled because I felt disrespected. I shut down because I was overwhelmed. Those are explanations, not excuses. Discipline says, regardless of how I feel, I choose my response. That is adulthood. Now let's get brutally honest. High emotional intelligence with low discipline often makes people worse, not better. They become skilled at storytelling, skilled at rationalizing, skilled at blaming circumstances, but their results don't improve. Meanwhile, emotionally disciplined people may not articulate their feelings well, but they don't destroy their lives with them. They act correctly even when they feel wrong. That's the standard. Here's a key distinction you must internalize. Emotions are information. Discipline is execution. Information tells you what's happening. Execution decides what happens next. If execution fails, information is irrelevant. Let's look at real-world examples. A leader who understands stress but panics under pressure loses authority. A parent who understands anger but yells teaches fear, not respect. A partner who understands insecurity but acts needy destroys attraction. Understanding without control creates inconsistency. Inconsistency destroys trust. People don't trust what you know. They trust what you do consistently. That's why emotional discipline is respected. It's predictable, stable, reliable. Now here's where discipline actually comes from. Rules.
not moods, not feelings, rules. Emotionally disciplined people live by pre-decided rules. I don't raise my voice. I don't send messages when emotional. I don't argue when angry. I don't explain myself under pressure. These rules remove decision-making during emotional moments because decision-making collapses under emotion. Rules don't. Rules protect you from yourself. Most people don't have emotional rules. They improvise, and improvisation under stress leads to disaster. Discipline is boring. Boring is effective. Here's a rule you must adopt immediately. Never trust your emotional judgment in the moment. If you feel strongly about something, that is the worst time to act. Strong emotion distorts perception. Delay, regulate, then decide. This is not suppression. This is leadership. Let's talk about strength. People confuse emotional expression with strength. They think venting is honesty, exploding is authenticity. It's not. Strength is restraint. Anyone can lose control. Few people can hold it, and the ability to hold it separates leaders from liabilities. Discipline does not remove emotion. It removes damage. You will still feel anger. You will still feel fear. You will still feel desire. But those feelings no longer dictate behavior. That's freedom. Now here's your assignment for this chapter. Write down 3 emotional rules you will follow no matter what. Examples: I do not argue when my voice is raised. I wait 24 hours before responding to emotional messages. I breathe and pause before speaking when triggered. These rules are not negotiable. They are standards. Standards create identity. Once you install rules, emotional moments become simple. Not easy, but simple. You don't ask, "What should I do?" You follow the rule. This is how discipline replaces chaos. Remember this phrase: control beats comprehension every time. Say it again. This chapter reinforces the core theme of the audiobook. Emotional mastery is about behavior, not feelings. In the next chapter, we address a hidden emotional trap that destroys calmness even in disciplined people: attachment. Because as long as you are attached to outcomes you cannot control, emotion will always find a way to destabilize you. That's where we go next.
Chapter 7. Detach from outcomes to stay calm under pressure. Most emotional chaos comes from one source: attachment. Not effort, not caring, attachment. You can work hard without attachment. You can care deeply without attachment. But when you become emotionally attached to outcomes you do not control, you surrender your calm. And calm is the foundation of power. Attachment sounds noble. It sounds like commitment. It sounds like passion. But emotional attachment is not commitment. It is dependence. It says, "I need this to go a certain way for me to be okay." And the moment you need something external to regulate your internal state, you are no longer in control. Detach does not mean disengage. Detach means release control over the result. This chapter will change how you experience pressure forever, if you understand it. Pressure is not created by difficulty. Pressure is created by expectation. When you expect a certain response, a certain outcome, a certain reaction, and reality doesn't comply, emotion spikes. Anger when expectations are violated. Anxiety when outcomes are uncertain. Disappointment when results don't match hope. Detach from the outcome and pressure collapses. Here's the core principle: control the effort
release the result. Say it again. You control your preparation. You control your actions. You control your standards. You do not control other people. You do not control timing. You do not control outcomes. Emotionally disciplined people understand this deeply. They show up fully. They act decisively. Then they let go. That letting go preserves calm. Now let's talk about where attachment hides. It hides in validation. It hides in approval. It hides in recognition. When you need someone to respond a certain way to feel okay, you are emotionally exposed. A delayed message ruins your mood. A negative reaction shakes your confidence. Silence feels like rejection. That is attachment. Detachment says, I will act according to my values, not according to how others respond. This is not coldness. This is sovereignty. People who are detached are not careless. They are grounded. They don't beg for outcomes. They don't chase validation. They don't panic when things don't go as planned, because they understand something critical. Outcomes are feedback, not identity. You can fail without being a failure. You can be rejected without being unworthy. You can be criticized without being wrong. Attachment blurs this distinction. Detachment restores it. Now here's a practical shift you must make. Stop asking, what if this doesn't work? Start asking, am I acting correctly regardless? Correct action is always within your control. And when you focus on correct action, emotion stabilizes. Let's look at a real example. Someone goes into a difficult conversation desperate for a specific response. They rehearse, they hope, they fear. They are emotionally unstable before the conversation even starts. Why? Because they are attached. Another person goes into the same conversation with one goal: speak clearly and calmly. Whatever happens after is not theirs to control. That person remains steady. Same situation, different attachment, different emotional outcome. Detachment removes desperation. Desperation fuels emotional reactivity. This is why emotionally disciplined people often appear confident, not because they expect success, but because they are prepared for any outcome. They know they'll be okay regardless. Now let's address fear. Fear often comes from attachment to safety, certainty, or comfort. But growth requires uncertainty. If you want emotional control under pressure, you must be willing to accept discomfort without resistance. Resistance amplifies emotion. Acceptance diffuses it. Acceptance does not mean liking the situation. It means not fighting reality. Fight reality, and emotion explodes. Accept reality, and emotion settles. Here's a phrase to repeat when pressure hits. I will do my part and release the rest. Say it again. Your assignment for this chapter is this. For the next week, when you notice emotional tension about an outcome, write down 2 lists. List 1, what I control. List 2, what I don't control. Then focus your energy exclusively on list 1. This trains detachment. You don't suppress desire. You don't stop caring. You stop clinging. Care deeply. Attach lightly. That balance creates emotional stability. This chapter reinforces the central theme of the audiobook. Control comes from internal alignment, not external guarantees. In the next chapter, we move from philosophy to structure, because detachment alone is not enough. You must replace emotional reactions with rules, because rules remove regret. That's where we go next.
Chapter 8. Replace reaction with rules. If you rely on feelings to decide how you act, you will always be inconsistent. And inconsistency destroys emotional control. This chapter is where emotional mastery becomes automatic, because rules remove choice. And when choice disappears, regret disappears with it. Most people live reactively. They wake up and let emotions decide the tone of the day. They let mood dictate behavior. They improvise their responses in moments of pressure. Improvisation feels flexible. Improvisation feels free. Improvisation is chaos. Emotionally disciplined people don't improvise. They operate by rules. Rules are not restrictions. Rules are protection. They protect you from emotional versions of yourself that you no longer want in control. Here's the truth. In emotional moments, you cannot be trusted. Your judgment is distorted. Your perception is narrowed. Your impulses are loud. So you must decide in advance how you will behave. That's what rules do. Rules are decisions made in calm moments that guide behavior in emotional ones. Without rules, emotion always wins. Let's make this concrete. An untrained person asks in a heated moment, "What should I do right now?" A disciplined person already knows. They don't ask, they follow the rule. This eliminates internal debate, and debate drains energy. Here's the key principle. Rules remove regret. Every regret you carry came from breaking an internal standard or never having one. You spoke when you shouldn't have. You reacted when you should have paused. You explained when silence would have been stronger. Rules prevent these mistakes before they happen. Now let's talk about the kinds of rules you need. First, communication rules. Examples: I don't raise my voice. I don't respond immediately when emotional. I don't argue through text. These rules alone will save you years of damage. Second, decision rules. Examples: I don't make decisions when tired, angry, or afraid. I wait 24 hours before big emotional decisions. I sleep on important choices. Emotion loves urgency. Rules force delay. Delay restores control. Third, boundary rules. Examples: I don't chase people who pull away. I don't over-explain myself. I don't beg for validation. These rules protect self-respect, and self-respect stabilizes emotion. Now, here's where people resist. They say, "But what if the situation is different?" It's not. Emotion always lies in the same way. It always exaggerates. It always demands immediacy. Rules don't need to be perfect. They need to be consistent. Consistency builds identity. When you live by rules, something powerful happens. Your emotional system learns what is allowed and what is not. At first, emotion will push back. It will feel frustrated, restricted, unheard. That's normal. You are removing its authority. Over time, emotion adapts. It stops screaming because screaming no longer works. This is how emotional discipline becomes effortless. Now let's talk about self-trust. People think rules remove freedom. They don't. They create it. Without rules, you're constantly cleaning up emotional messes, apologizing, explaining, repairing. With rules, life becomes quieter, cleaner, simpler. You trust yourself because you know you won't sabotage your future for momentary relief. That trust creates calm. Here's a critical instruction. Do not create too many rules.
3 to 5 strong emotional rules are enough. Too many rules become noise. Clear rules become anchors. Your assignment for this chapter is essential. Write down 5 non-negotiable emotional rules you will live by. Not goals, rules. For example, I pause before responding when triggered. I never send emotional messages. I don't explain myself repeatedly. I leave situations where respect disappears. I regulate my body before speaking. Put these rules somewhere visible, because when emotion rises, memory fades. Visibility restores discipline. Now repeat this phrase. Rules remove regret. Say it again. This chapter ties directly into the core theme of the book. Emotional control is not about willpower in the moment. It's about systems built in advance. In the next chapter, we flip the script completely. We stop seeing emotional triggers as problems and start using them as training tools. Because if something triggers you, it can also train you. That's where we go next.
Chapter 9. Use emotional triggers as training tools. Most people hate being triggered. They avoid it. They blame others for it. They wish it would stop. That reaction keeps them weak. This chapter will change how you see emotional triggers forever. Because here's the truth. If it triggers you, it can train you. Triggers are not enemies. They are indicators. They reveal where control is still underdeveloped. Every time something triggers you, it points to a skill you haven't mastered yet. And that is good news, because you can't train what you can't see. Most people try to eliminate triggers by controlling the environment. They avoid people, avoid conversations, avoid situations. That creates fragility. Emotionally disciplined people do the opposite. They let triggers appear and use them deliberately, not to suffer, to train. Here's the reframe you must adopt. A trigger is a workout. Just like muscles grow under resistance, emotional control grows under pressure. No pressure, no growth. If your life feels emotionally easy, you are probably avoiding growth. Now let's clarify something important. Using triggers as training tools does not mean provoking yourself recklessly. It means when a trigger appears naturally, you do not waste the opportunity. You don't react, you don't suppress, you observe and regulate. This is controlled exposure. Controlled exposure builds resilience. Here's how this works in practice. You feel anger rise. Instead of thinking, I shouldn't feel this, you think, this is training. That mental shift alone changes your behavior. You slow down, you regulate your body, you pause. You stay present with the discomfort without acting on it. This weakens the trigger. The next time it appears, it has less power. Avoidance keeps triggers strong. Weakness weakens them. Now let's talk about common triggers. Disrespect, criticism, rejection, being ignored, lack of control. These are universal. Everyone has them. The difference is not who gets triggered. The difference is who trains. Emotionally disciplined people see patterns. They notice what consistently activates emotion, and instead of complaining, they prepare. Preparation turns reaction into response. Here's a powerful technique: trigger mapping. Write down your top 5 emotional triggers. Be honest. Then, for each trigger, write, what emotion appears? What is my usual reaction? What is the controlled response I will practice? This turns chaos into strategy. Now the trigger no longer surprises you. It cues training.
Let's say criticism triggers you. The old pattern, defense, explanation, irritation. The new training response, pause, regulate body, ask one clarifying question. You practice this every time criticism appears. Over time, criticism loses its sting. Why? Because your nervous system learns there is no threat. Threat is not removed by avoidance. Threat is removed by mastery. Here's another example. Silence triggers anxiety. The old pattern, overthinking, messaging, seeking reassurance. The new training response, detach, breathe, redirect attention, delay action. Again, repetition. This is not about being emotionless. It's about being unshakable. Now here's the rule for this chapter. Never waste a trigger. Every trigger is a chance to grow stronger or reinforce weakness. Choose strength. At first, training will feel uncomfortable. You will feel the urge to react. Your body will resist stillness. That resistance is the muscle tearing. Stay with it. No reaction is a victory, even if it feels small. Small wins compound. Now let's talk about identity. Once you start using triggers as training tools, your identity shifts. You stop seeing yourself as emotionally reactive. You start seeing yourself as emotionally disciplined. Language matters. Now your assignment for this chapter. For the next week, choose one trigger and train on it intentionally. Just one. When it appears, pause, regulate, respond according to your rule. Do not try to fix everything at once. One trigger, repeated training. That is how control is built. This chapter reinforces the core theme of the book. Emotional mastery is not about avoiding life. It's about meeting life with regulation. In the final chapter, we bring everything together. Because emotional control doesn't just change how you feel. It changes how people treat you. It changes your presence. It changes your power. That's where we go next.
Chapter 10. Become the calm person everyone feels. This is where everything comes together. Emotional control is not just something you practice in private. It becomes something people experience when they are around you. Calm is contagious. So is chaos. When you master emotional control, your presence changes, your energy shifts. People respond differently, often without knowing why. They trust you more. They respect you more. They listen more closely. Not because you demand it, because you radiate stability. Most people underestimate the power of calm presence. They think influence comes from volume, dominance, or emotional intensity. It doesn't. Influence comes from control. The calmest person in the room sets the emotional temperature. Everyone else adjusts. This is not theory. This is observable in every environment. Workplaces, families, negotiations, crises. When stress rises, people look for someone steady, someone who isn't shaken, someone who doesn't rush. If that's you, leadership is automatic. Now let's define calm clearly. Calm is not passivity. Calm is not silence. Calm is not weakness. Calm is self-command under pressure. You still speak, you still act, you still decide, but you do it without emotional leakage. That is dominance. People who cannot control themselves cannot control situations, and people feel that. Now understand this. Your emotional state teaches others how to treat you. If you react easily, people learn they can push you. If you over-explain, people learn they don't need to respect your boundaries. If you explode, people learn to tiptoe or provoke.
But when you are calm, firm, and consistent, people adjust. They think before speaking. They choose words more carefully. They sense weight in your silence. Silence backed by control is louder than noise backed by emotion. This is why calm people rarely have to assert authority. It's already there. Let's talk about consistency. Anyone can be calm once. Mastery is being calm often. Not perfectly, but reliably. Reliability builds reputation. Your reputation becomes, he doesn't overreact. She stays grounded. They don't get pulled into drama. That reputation protects you. Now think about how this changes your life. Conflicts de-escalate around you. Conversations become cleaner. Stress becomes manageable. You don't absorb other people's emotions. You don't carry what isn't yours. You choose what enters. This is emotional sovereignty. And sovereignty feels like freedom. Now let's reflect on the journey you've taken through this audiobook. You learned to stop letting emotions lead your life. You learned that control is a skill, not a trait. You installed the pause. You stopped taking things personally. You learned to regulate the body. You chose discipline over explanation. You detached from outcomes. You replaced reactions with rules. You turned triggers into training. All of that leads here, presence. Not performative calm, not forced calm, earned calm. The kind that comes from repetition and restraint. Now here is the final challenge of this audiobook. For the next 7 days, live by this standard. No emotional reaction is immediate. No emotional decision is rushed. No emotional impulse is trusted. Pause, regulate, choose every day. You will fail sometimes. That's fine. Return to the standard. Progress is not perfection. Progress is consistency. Remember this final truth. Calm is power. Calm is dominance. Calm is freedom. When you control your emotions, no one controls you. And once you taste that level of freedom, you will never go back. This is not the end of the work. This is the beginning of your emotional authority. Carry it forward.
You've reached the end of this audiobook, but emotional mastery does not end here. It begins here. Everything you've heard comes down to one decision, repeated daily. You do not react. You regulate. You choose. That is the standard. Emotional control is not something you achieve once and keep forever. It is something you practice until it becomes who you are. And the next 7 days matter more than everything you've just listened to, because knowledge without application changes nothing. So here is the 7-day standard, the final instruction of this audiobook. For the next 7 days, you pause before you speak. You regulate your body before you decide. You detach from outcomes you don't control. You follow your rules, not your moods. You treat every trigger as training. No exceptions, no justification, no emotional shortcuts. You will feel resistance. Your ego will demand expression. Your old habits will fight back. Good. That means you're changing. Remember this. Emotional reactions are familiar, not inevitable. They feel natural only because you've practiced them for years. Now you're practicing something new. And at first, discipline feels unnatural. Silence feels uncomfortable. Restraint feels like loss. It's not. It's withdrawal from chaos. Every time you don't react, you win. Even if no one sees it, even if it feels small, those wins compound. You are rewiring your nervous system.
You are reshaping your identity. You are becoming the calm person others feel. And make no mistake, people will notice. Not because you announce it, but because your presence changes. You won't argue the same way. You won't chase the same way. You won't panic the same way. You'll move slower, speak less, choose better. And that will change the trajectory of your life. Here's the final truth to carry with you. The calmest person in the room controls the outcome. Not the loudest, not the angriest, not the most emotional. Calm controls. So when pressure rises, slow down. When emotion spikes, pause. When others lose control, stay grounded. That is dominance. That is leadership. That is freedom. Your challenge is simple and demanding. For the next 7 days, do not react immediately, ever. Pause, breathe, decide. Do this, and emotional control will stop being something you try to have. It will become who you are. You are no longer ruled by emotion. You are no longer dragged by impulse. You are no longer controlled by external chaos. You lead yourself. And once you master that, nothing controls you again.